Hello again. This is Vishal Agarwal, the founding president of TAI in Africa, and I am delighted to bring a second keynote from our region to you. Dr. Ola Brown is with us from Lagos, and Ola is a fascinating story. She's a real doctor. She's an actual practicing physician from Hull York Medical School. She'll tell you her story. She was born in the UK, grew up in the UK, got educated and practiced medicine in the UK, and then got picked as a scholar on a special scholarship and went to Japan. And as she tells the story, in Japan, her best friends were investment bankers. So she learned to speak the language of finance while she was in Tokyo. She then came back to the region. She actually reverse migrated to Nigeria, formed an incredible company called Flying Doctors. She's been featured on CNN, on BBC, on Forbes, on Al Jazeera. Dr. Brown is a Dangote Fellow, an Aspen Fellow, a TED Fellow, been featured by the World Economic Forum, and I am very proud to call her a fellow YPOer. Here is Dr. Ola Brown.
Hello and good day to everybody, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm so glad to be here today talking to different kids that came in and out of the house, but myself and my sister were probably the children that stayed the longest with her. And you know, that really was an interesting experience because for a lot of people in that town, it was the first time that they'd ever come across a Black person before. People asked me, you know, if I was somehow related to Michael Jackson, or if like it was, you know, some side effect of some disease. People didn't really understand who I was, and I had to become quite used to explaining to people who I was, what my background was, why I looked this way. And I wish I had put some of my school pictures up for this presentation, because it's so funny to see, you know, 100 or 400 white people in a small rural town, and then there's me. But I really struggled in school. I struggled with, and I'll weave some of these threads together, but I really struggled in school. And one of the major issues that I struggled with was bullying. I particularly struggled with a particular set of kids. And one day their mum decided that she was going to get us together for lunch, my kids and her kids and me and my sister, and we were going to have to talk. And she explained, you know, a lot about, you know, the issues of race and why I was different and why I looked different. And she converted her own children through that lunch into my biggest cheerleaders. And sort of that leads me on to the first lesson that I'm going to share, which is, you know, about people and about, you know, the threads that people take through your life. Because that lady's name was Kath Temple, and that was my first interaction with her. But when I wanted to apply to medical school, I really didn't know how to fill out a UCAS application. My Nigerian parents, my foster parents, weren't particularly au fait with the application process to universities in England. So I had to go back to Kath and say, you know, I'm filling out this application, and obviously it was terrible. But she helped me fill it out. She knew somebody that used to work for the admissions board. She was like, you know, these are people that know how to write these essays. So she helped me out with my essay. And then when I started my company, again, I didn't know anything about business. And again, she joined as the first member of my advisory board. And I don't even speak to her children anymore. I only communicate with her children through her. But it's interesting, and this is the first probably lesson that I'd share, is it's interesting how people play different roles in your life through different times, and how, relationships that start off in very odd ways end up being, very, very constant and sort of impactful relationships as the years go by. So fast forward from that lesson, I'll share 3 in total. To going through medical school. Because I was from a small town, I made it into the newspaper when I got admitted to medical school. And this was sort of the most tragic life event for me happened in my second year of medical school when my sister, my youngest sister, Busola, was in Nigeria, actually. She was on holiday here. And she became quite sick. And even as a second, third year medical student, I knew that the care that she was getting was way below the standard that you would find in England. And it was such a traumatic process, seeing the treatment that was at the tip of my fingertips, even as a student in England, she couldn't get access to. And we tried to move her to a larger hospital, but somehow there was no transport system. She couldn't go by road because she was too critical at the time. We couldn't get an air ambulance. The nearest air ambulance was all the way in South Africa, which was going to take 48 hours to come to Nigeria. So it was a bit of a panic. And eventually my younger sister died. And she didn't die because the help that she needed wasn't available anywhere. She died because she was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And that was something else that really impacted my journey. And I think probably a life changing moment for me, because it got me thinking about the state of healthcare on our continent. It got me thinking more about the role of doctors, the role of investors, the role of financiers, the role of politicians in the healthcare ecosystem. And, got me thinking about how the problem of poverty in Africa increases the need for healthcare, increases the need for these life-saving treatments, but decreases our ability to finance it. So as soon as I left medical school, I was on a mission to see how somehow, if anyhow, I could get back into the system and try and change it. And that's probably my second lesson. My first was around people who are, have been the centerpiece of everything, relationships, and building real authentic relationships with people, relationships that have started off in very odd ways and have evolved over time. But I think the second sort of thread that I hope resonates with everybody here, or some of the people here, is around innovation through passion, and using personal experiences, some tragic, some happy, some maybe in between, to inform the business decisions that we make. Knowing as YPO, as an organization, we believe really strongly that business shouldn't just be about profit. It's important to be profitable, don't get me wrong. It's important to make money, and nothing happens in the world until somebody makes a profit. Even non-profits, they're spending the money of people that have made profit. But impact is also important. And a lot of, especially in Lagos, we one of our sort of mantras in the Lagos YPA chapter is around business as a force for good, and as around purpose as well as profit. And I hope that second lesson resonates with everybody as well. So fast forward again into getting a scholarship in Japan, like Vishal described. And then moving on to start thinking about what I could do in Africa. And I think, going through medical school and traditional training in medical school, it teaches a one-way career track. You've got to go and work in a hospital or work as an academic. And there I was thinking about, building an organization that really could produce a large amount of change for people, but not quite knowing how to do it. But luckily, the only people that spoke English, good, Western English in Japan that I met were all investment bankers. They were all people that worked for McKinsey and Company and Goldman Sachs. So through a random decision that I had made to take on this scholarship, I managed to, meet people that I'd never, the type of people, I guess, that I'd never come across before. All of my friends were medics. And we started having these conversations. And I realized that, building, especially when you train in Britain, I think that I came out with the impression that business was really evil. And, I through medical school, I was very against, private sector intervention in the NHS and very socialist. But coming out of, the experience in Japan, I realized that, business can be good. And I came to Nigeria armed with some of the advice and some of the guidance that these guys had given me to start an air ambulance business. So I did that for a few years, and it grew into the largest air ambulance service in West and Central Africa. We were doing flights from some of the most difficult areas that you can imagine, Boko Haram affected areas in the north of Nigeria and Mali, the Central African Republic with their long-standing conflicts, into the Congo, and it was amazing work. And we were able to cover a large section of the continent with our flights. In fact, I think that we've looked at the data, and there's almost hardly any countries in Africa that we'd not sort of attended to an emergency call. But I started feeling that there was still more impact to be made, and we're making profits. And I didn't want to put all of the profit back into the stock market, where I wouldn't have any influence over what was done in the company. Really, I'd be like owning like 0.000% of the company. I wanted to put it into meaningful work, and I wanted to sort of pay back or pay forward what entrepreneurship has done for me to other people. So we decided, along with my friends, to start our first venture capital firm, where we're investing primarily in fintech. And I think the greatest joy that I've experienced was the first company that we invested in was a company called Paystack. And I think the greatest joy that I had was not really being able to make money for myself or grow a big business for myself, but being able to provide the capital that has started a lot of big businesses. Paystack being our first, one of our first investments, it was quite emotional for us. And this year, in the midst of a lot of uncertainty, a global pandemic, having to stay at home, really depressing year, Paystack was actually acquired by Stripe for $200 million. We invested in this company when it was a tiny shell of a company, and just being able to pay that forward with so many other companies was really exciting to me. The last sort of lesson and the last phase of my life was actually going back to my love of healthcare, and we've started a separate vehicle to invest just in healthcare. And Vishal knows about some of our portfolio companies and some of our investments. And I'm hoping to, within the space of 15 years, being a medical doctor in the hospital and seeing seeing just 10 patients, our portfolio of companies now, through the span of our investments, has touched 100,000 patients. It would have taken me several lifetimes working in the hospital as a doctor to do that. And our goal is actually to touch the lives of 5 million patients in the next 5 years. But it took a huge transition from really technical work, where I was aiming to just become a specialist, to almost reversing my training and going from this sole aim of becoming a specialist to becoming more of a generalist. Starting another degree, I started a master's in finance and economics, doing lots of courses in accounting, and completely changing the way politically I read the world. And I think that leads me to my last and final point, which is around, you know, being open to change and understanding that no matter what phase of our lives we're in, that we can always change track and change course. And we shouldn't be afraid to pivot. We shouldn't be afraid to, those of us who are in the investment space, in the tech space, and manage or look after startups, shouldn't be afraid to pivot to something else and do something else. And we can give that advice, and we can give that advice. We should be able to give that advice without too much fear, as long as it's guided. And also for us personally, I guess, to remember that we can always change too, and the world is changing so rapidly, and technology is evolving so quickly with the influence of artificial intelligence and 3D printing and the Internet of Things and quantum computing. We're in a stage of, you know, the world's industrial development where we're experiencing the most rapid change that the world has ever seen, and that means that we do have to be more open to making changes, to changing our skills, to upgrading our skills continually. And again, that's one of the founding principles of YPO, and why I love YPO, because there's a huge amount of dedication to continuous professional development and making sure that we're true professionals, in that we continue to seek more knowledge, continue to get better at what we do, and not be afraid to make those changes. So I've just been alerted that I've run out of time. So I'd just like to say a big thank you to the audience. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to listening to you and listening to the Q&A. And, you know, hopefully some of that story resonated with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ola. Thank you for joining us and sharing your very inspiring story with the audience. We have over 4,000 people in the audience today, and they're delighted to hear from you, as I am, as your friend. For the